Hey, how's it going? I'm RZ from the 107th Joint Aviation Squadron, and this video is going to be about basic brevity and communication in DCS. Now, this is a recorded presentation from our Training on Tuesday session that took place Tuesday, May 12th, 2021. If you'd like more information on Training on Tuesday, check our Discord in the description for details. This video will show you easy and advanced methods to employ basic fighter communications efficiently in a DCS mission environment. Here's Petey, one of our squadron controllers, who will lay it all out for us.
All right. Well, that's a hack, everybody. Welcome to TOT. It is 01 Zulu. We have so many people here. It's wonderful. Thanks, everybody, for coming. This TOT is going to be on comm basics between fighters and C2. So this is a little bit more geared towards the fighters. The controllers did have a little bit of a academic lesson a few weeks ago that covers some of this stuff, but this is mostly geared towards the fighters, but also towards fighters and controllers. And I think most of us who are controllers on here also fly an aircraft. So it's really for everybody in the end. The references for this TOT are listed at the top of my document. And by the way, if you haven't opened the document already, check the event discussion channel. My latest TOT ping has a link to another message with the TOT ping that has the link to the document. Please join if you so choose to follow along. I will obviously be streaming it right here on the left side of my screen, and then on the right side, I'm going to have just also ACC and the brevity document up as well, just in case we need to reference it. It's right there. The way that this lesson is going to work is that this is going to be an academic session, and our practicum portion is going to be liberation. That starts in about 1 hour. So that's how this is going to roll. It's a discussion. I'm not here to just talk at you guys. We're here to learn and have fun together. So I'm going to go over some things. We can talk about it. If you have a question, please just get my attention first in Discord and I will acknowledge you and then we can go. There are a lot of us in here, so let's just please be mindful of the fact that there are so many people and many people may want to ask a question at once. If you don't mind, go ahead and mute yourself on Discord just in case there's any background noise. We are recording this today. Thanks, Ouch. And he will be publishing this at a later time for your review. All right. And with that, just a disclaimer here. All tactics, ranges, procedures are derived purely from and for DCS World, and they have no intended or unintended correlation to or use in the real world. While similar terms and definitions are taken from real-world publicly available publications, they are purely used to form a basis for tactics in DCS. So that's my disclaimer. This is for DCS. That's it. Okay, the objectives today outlined right here. We're going to cover these things. Sweet. The purpose of the brief today, really, on the whole, is to elevate the communication and understanding between pilots and C2s. We're going to go over some examples, some comm basics regarding brevity to help keep communication succinct, brief, and to the point on the radio. Because as we know, in big missions, radios get busy. And the more we kind of go back to basics, stick to the book, as long as we all understand the book, which is part of the reason why we're here, as long as we understand each other, we can stick to brevity as much as possible to keep those radios clean. So I'm going to go through the list of brevity here.
Sorry, I'm a bit late.
And I'm going to cover the highlights. I'm not going to go through every one. Okay. If you have a question about something I don't cover, or if I do cover it and you still have a question, please do ask. Again, this is more of a discussion format, so just give my attention right away. There's no need to wait till the end. Very good. So we all know what a bullseye is. We all know what a bra is. I'm not going to cover that. It's just kind of there for reference if we need it. And by the way, these definitions are taken straight out of also ACC. Sorry, the multi-service brevity codes by ALSA. So Bullseye and Bra we're all familiar with. Picture, we're not going to cover like different picture calls in this. That's kind of outside the scope of this. We can definitely do that at a different time. There's many sorts of ways to give a picture. Not quite the scope of this brief. Commit. Commit is a really good one. Commit can be a directive call or a request, effectively. So in the air-to-air world, this first definition is what it's saying, like, C2 to fighters, hey, Eagle 1 commit single group bullseye, blah, blah, blah. That would be saying, hey, C2 says, hey, fighter, intercept the thing. Or the fighter can call it and say, Eagle commit north or something like that. You're using it basically the same way. It's just whoever says it has a different meaning, right? If it comes from C2, it's a request. If it comes from the flight lead, it is the directing his flight to say, go commit. Its vague definition says set brief intercept geometry. It basically just means you're going to focus in on the group that's discussed and go try to kill it. That's really what it means. Skip it is kind of the opposite. Skip it is, I'm going to go leave that alone. I may have been starting. I may have already called commit, but skip it cancels that. It can also come from C2 or the flight lead. If for whatever reason the flight lead says, hey, no, screw it, I don't want to do this intercept. Maybe bad guys turn cold and we're just not going to engage them that far away. It can say skip it, reset cap. Or C2 can say Eagle 1-1, skip it, target this other group over here, right? Because maybe that other group is suddenly more important. Bogey dope is a request from a fighter to C2, and the fighter is asking for information about the closest group. You could amplify that and say bogey dope lead group or bogey dope east group, to specify which one you want to point out. Or if it's just as simple as, Goliath, Viper 1, bogey dope, C2 just finds the closest group and points that out to Viper 1. Snap is a little bit different. It's kind of 2-in-1 here. And it can, again, be fighter or C2. If a fighter says, Goliath, Viper 1, snap me to the east group. What that means is first, the C2 gives an intercept heading and then gives a bra. So now if the bad guy and the good guy are hot to each other, it would be the same heading, right? Turn right 010, target lead group bra 01069, right? But if that lead group is maybe beaming or flanking in one direction, a snap would be kind of an intercept heading. This would be most useful maybe at close range to try to get the fighter pointed in the right direction where he can still see him on radar, but he might not be pointed directly at the bad guy. If C2 tells a fighter to snap a direction, that just means, hey, dude, I need you to fly this way right now, 0 delay, do it. It could be a whole host of reasons why, but that's what it is. Okay, declare. This is a request from a fighter to C2. And it's basically asking a question and saying, hey, C2, what is the ID of this group? And by ID, I mean, is he friendly? Is he hostile? Is he unknown? Is he a stranger, right? It's not asking for the type. It's not asking if it's an F5 or a MiG-31. It is purely the ID. The response needs to come back with full position data, such as bullseye. In DCS, we can use BRA because very few aircraft actually have target bullseye capability. So this is directly out of the ALSA ACC. Position data, full position data must accompany responses. That's for real world type stuff to make sure 100% that you're not about to shoot down a good guy. by mistake. We can kind of truncate that a little bit in DCS because video game, but really ideally, if you want full immersion, a declare response should be with position data. And it just sounds like a normal bullseye or a normal bra. So if Eagle 1 says Goliath declare lead group, because we all know the Eagle only has bra information, C2 would maybe respond with bra. Eagle 1 Goliath lead group bra 1, 2, 3, 45, 25,000 hostile to contacts flanker. And you just emphasize the ID. So he can go pew pew. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about RWR here in these next three. This is one that I think there's a fair amount of confusion in the DCS community about what really means what. And we'll get to some of the radar communication too, and that'll be kind of an emphasis item later in the brief. NAILS is radar warning receiver indication of an air intercept radar in search, right? So two things are important there. It's an air radar, it's not a ground radar. It's an air radar in search mode. So like it's, I mean, unless it's a super advanced threat, like a, you know, something that can shoot you in Twiz, NAILS isn't really important. Spike is the quintessential deedle in your helmet that says, hey, something is locking you. You're an STT. Somebody's got you an STT. So radar warning receiver indication that an AI threat is in track or launch. We'll come back to a little bit more of that later. Naked is the opposite of those two. It's like, I've got no radar warning receiver indications. Now, in a big battle, there might be a lot of radars out there. There might be some SAMs, there might be some friendly stuff, right? Friendly fighters, friendly SAMs. There might even be some other enemy RWR indications out there. But if you think about it in the context of one intercept, you know, maybe you're going against a couple flankers, so you're expecting to see the 27 or the 30 on your RWR. Maybe you were previously spiked by a 30 and now you're not. You just call Eagle 1-1 naked. Even though you're seeing a whole bunch of other stuff that's not pertinent to your fight, but that's really how that is focused. Okay, a little bit on radar stuff and looking at enemy bad guys. Okay, locked is what you call when you have something locked on your radar, like you see it, depending on what airplane you fly, you have a system track for it, and you've pushed a button to select that track and you could fire on it. That's what locked means. Lost lock, just the opposite, right? You don't see them anymore. So especially lately with DCS and all these perfect notches and chaff flare countermeasures that the AI is putting out there, it's really easy to lose radar. So you can just say lost lock lead group. And that's pretty essay enhancing communication that, hey, I like, if I shot, my missile's probably trashed, or if I'm about to shoot, I can't shoot because I just lost it on radar. Okay. Target is sorry, did somebody have a question? Did I miss something? Maybe that was just my own. Okay, sorry. I thought I heard somebody. Target is one step up past locked. Okay. So target means like you're going to go after that guy, like you own that guy. You see him on your radar, you're going to lock him and you're going to shoot him and you're going to own responsibility for that dude. The reason that's important is because if there's multiple blue aircraft out there and multiple red aircraft out there, if everybody's targeted to a red contact, that's a good thing because now we know every red contact is going to be shot. Right? Like one fighter might be able to see multiple contacts, but maybe he can only target one or two because they're in range 20 miles and he can't shoot the trail group, right? So he's not going to target the trail group. He might be able to see him on his radar, but he can't target him because otherwise he's just going to get shot in the face by the lead group. One thing we haven't quite established yet in the 107th is any sort of like targeting responsibilities, like defaults, standards. I think it's something we're kind of working on in the background. We can work on as a future contract because what that does is it allows flights to go out there as a two ship or something and be like, okay, well, anytime we encounter any sort of threat, we know who's going to target and who's going to shoot first, and then we don't have to say, hey, two, are you going to target? No, one, or you should target. It's just standard, and then you just call targeted, 1 targeted east group, 2 targeted west group, box 3, crank out right, sort of a thing. And that makes the comm flow super well. So target is a directive call. Targeted means the speaker has assumed targeting responsibility for a group. So a flight lead might say, a 2 target east group, then 2, as soon as he locks up the east group, he's going to say 2 targeted east group. And then that's it, right? That's winning comm, and we're going to come back to winning comm in the end. Sort is just kind of breaking out individual groups. So if you have a group of 2 contacts that are right next to each other, you could have, Viper 1 sort the western contact and Viper 2 sort the eastern contact, but that is an intra-flight discussion. The way that comm kind of boils down from C2, if the fighter doesn't already call targeted, the C2 guy can be directed and say, Viper 1 target east group, Viper 1 targeted east group, and then maybe on intra-flight or maybe on the air-to-air common as well, he could say 2 sort eastern east group or something like that. It's to further divvy out targeting within a flight. And again, sort is the directive, sorted is the call to say, hey, I'm sorted into this dude. Okay, clean is the word that you use when your radar does not see a contact or a group or something that you're supposed to see. Okay, I'm going to make an emphasis note here. Your RWR cannot be clean. That's not a thing. Your RWR is naked. Your radar is clean. It's a kind of important distinction because they communicate 2 very different things that have very different meanings. So keeping those differentiated is super, super important for proper understanding. Fighters can say, maybe they just got a directive from C2 or from flight lead to say, hey, target east group, and 2 can say, nope, clean east group. I don't see him.
Hey, Petey.
Yes.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I've heard if you have a buddy spike call and you're not locked. I've heard, clean was the response. Is that not correct?
That is not correct.
Okay.
No. If somebody is saying, wait, say that example again. I may have misunderstood something.
So if there's a buddy spike call on the radio.
Yeah. So the first should have been a ray gun, but okay.
Right. Or yeah, sorry. Yeah. So ray gun, and yeah, there's a ray gun call on the radio. And
yeah.
The response, it should be no response unless it's a buddy spike response. Is that, I've heard
Correct.
some people say it's clean.
Yeah, that would be incorrect. So
okay.
What you don't want, because here, imagine this: you're on a flight of 4, and there are 4 ships. So there's 16 people in the air. Do you want everybody to come back over the radio and say, "Oh, I'm clean. Yep, 2's clean, 3's clean, 4's clean," and then 4. See that it's. I understand that people want to say no, to give the person who's saying ray gun the confidence, oh, I can shoot because I'm not actually locking a friendly, but actually saying something is detrimental unless you are actually experiencing a buddy spike.
Okay, thank you.
There is also a term buddy lock that is kind of one final term in that whole sequence, and I'll scroll up to that so we can all take a look. So ray gun is basically asking the question, right? So ray gun, hey, am I locked to a friendly? And then buddy spike is, oh shoot, hey man, you're spiking me. I'm a friendly, right? And then the final piece of that is the person who calls ray gun would then call buddy lock to yet confirm, hey, I know I'm locked on a friendly. Either if it continues, I know I'm doing it, or if it stops, it's oh, hey, sorry. With some IFR procedures, like departure procedures out of an airfield, you might do a radar assisted trail. So 1 takes off, 2 takes off a few seconds later, and then 2 locks 1 with the radar so they can keep track of each other in the clouds, right? So you're going to get a spike. Just I mean, it's kind of default, so you probably wouldn't even need ray gun, buddy lock, or buddy spec, buddy lock, but you could, right? So, good question. Yeah, but if there's a ray gun call and you're not spiked, don't say anything. Great question. Okay, clean. Okay. Oh yes, and the point here, both fighter and C2 can be clean. So, if C2 doesn't see something, right? We experience that, especially with LOT ATC realistic advanced. Like if it's outside the range, if a contact is outside the range of C2, or if it's behind a mountain, right? C2 can be like, nope, clean. I don't see it. Now, it's really important to, when you call clean, repeat the same location information that was just said to you. So if C2 says Viper 1 Goliath target lead group bullseye 1 2 3 45 25,000, Viper 1, if he can't see that lead group, he should say clean lead group or clean bullseye 1 2 3 45 25,000. It's a comparative comm way of saying like, hey, I'm just reading this back to make sure that we understood each other. So don't, now the counter to that is like, if Viper 1 says Goliath Viper 1 picture, Goliath clean, that means there's no groups on the radar, right? But if you're trying to figure out a specific group and say, oh no, clean lead group or clean bullseye 1 2 3 45, like that's where that's kind of important. Okay, dropping is not to the same level as skip it. It just means, so skip it is kind of like for a whole intercept, like I'm stopping a whole intercept. Dropping is like I'm just going to drop this one group or drop this one contact. Maybe that one contact is turning cold. Maybe the lead group turned cold and is running away bravely, and Viper 1's like, nope, I'm switching my targeting to the lead group, or sorry, from the lead group to the trail group. The way you say that is Viper 1 dropping lead group targeting trail group, or Viper 1 targeted trail group. It can be, so if you just say drop, it's a directive. So maybe flight lead says to drop east group, then 2 would say to dropping east group. Okay, threat. We all know what a threat is. Not a huge topic of discussion for today. Just a briefed range. If it's within a briefed range, then it's a threat. That's something that has to be established ahead of time. Fox 1, 2, and 3, we all know what that is. Strobe. Strobe is something I want to talk about, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion later about it. But strobe is radar jamming, noise jamming. It's the only kind of jamming we experience in DCS, thank goodness. There's a picture of it later for you for you Eagle and Hornet pilots. You guys know what I'm talking about. Not every aircraft in DCS displays radar jamming, for better or worse. We'll talk about strobe a little bit more later. We're going to talk about green, yellow, and red states and missile state brevity. I'm going to skip that here for now. Blind.
Quick question, please.
Yes.
How specific do we need to be when we see a threat, or when we are describing a threat, like threat flanker 30 miles to inches 25, or maybe drop what type of aircraft that is?
Yeah, great question. So threat calls are accompanied with bras. So threat bra 1 2 3 45. Okay, that was not a good threat. Threat bra 1 2 0 15 20,000 hot hostile flanker. Usually, threat range is brief, so it's like, hey, AWACS, if any bad guys get within 20 miles of me, just give me a threat call if I don't know about it. That's perfectly acceptable. Because in DCS, if you're going against something other than a MiG-21 or an F5, you can probably get shot at when you kind of trip that 20-mile range. So
we can drop range call.
Say again?
So we can not mention range.
No, you definitely want the range. Range is one of the most important things. So threat bra 120 15, that's your range. 20,000 hot hostile flanker.
Right. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you definitely want the range in there. There's
question.
Yeah, go ahead, Butterfly.
Morning. And is there a go-to range for a threat? So say none's brief, do we have just say if they're within 5 miles, call threat, or if they're in 50 miles, call threat?
So I wonder if it's in this second. There it is. So take this with a massive grain of salt. This is the ALSA ACC baseline standard. 35 nautical miles independent of
range.
aspect. That's a bit far in DCS. I mean, not even F-14s shoot outside of 35 nautical miles. So, I mean, everything would be a threat at that point in DCS.
In PvE.
So, take that with a grain of salt, right? Notice this says should, right? So it can be briefed, excuse me, right? Threat criteria is defined during mission planning and relayed during the brief or check-in with the controller. So, you know, next time we do one of our ops butterfly, if we know that, okay, we've got Su-33s and Su-30s and MiG-29Ss, well, okay, the 29Ss and the 30s are your highest threat. They can carry R-77s, which have the highest range. So we're going to create our threat criteria based on our biggest threat. Now, if it's MiG-31, that can shoot you quite a bit further away, we're going to maybe bump out that threat range. So it's really more mission dependent. This standard of 35 is a standard from which you can deviate for sure.
Sick.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, blind visual tally no joy. I'm not going to talk about that too much right now. It's just another example of one of those like they each have a very specific meaning, whether you see something or you don't, and whether it's a friendly or if it's a bad guy. So we may come back to that a little bit later. I'm not going to go into it now. Faded. Aha, faded and vanished. These are really important for kill assessment and C2 communicating what C2 sees. So faded means that sensor data is lost on a group or a contact. So maybe if the east group hides behind a mountain and C2 can no longer see it because we're in lot ATC realistic mode and line of sight stuff, C2 could voice, hey, east group faded with a location, usually a bullseye. That doesn't mean that east group is dead. It just means that C2 can't see it anymore. Fighters could also say faded, but it's not really the point of the word. It's really for C2 to communicate. The big part of that is it does not mean that contact is dead. Vanished is what you're looking for when you want to talk about things possibly being dead. Vanished is another call that C2 makes that fighters usually don't make. It is a special case of faded, so it's a subsection, if you will, of faded. And it means that whatever you're describing, the group or the contact that you're describing, has disappeared from scope. I'm not getting any sensor data on it, but it's also not in a known blind zone, and it's correlated to shots by friendly. So it may still not be perfect. It may not be dead, but we have a reasonable suspicion that it is dead. Are there any questions about the distinction between faded and vanished? I don't see us too much using faded. We do use in the 107th like advanced realistic mode in lot ATC. So when we're, if we have a ground-based radar for that particular mission, and it's like at Sochi, and we're trying to look north into, Russia there. Okay, yeah, there's things that possibly could fade if they're going to go land at, MyCop or something, but probably not often used. There's some more I kind of put out of order. Sorry, we'll come back to that. I'm just going to keep going in order here. Furball is a very important call that can be made to enhance SA. We do use it very well that I've experienced here in the 107th on our servers and during our events. But just to remind everybody, a furball is when non-friendly and friendly aircraft are essentially merged. They're within 5 nautical miles of each other. This is often used as a response to a declare or maybe a bogey dope. So if I said bogey dope, if I as Eagle 1 said bogey dope lead group, imposter could come back and say Eagle 1 furball bra 1 2 3 20 and then you leave it at that. You don't need an altitude, and you certainly do not say an ID. So you just kind of give a bearing and range, and then you say the call sign of the friendly, merged, and number of contacts. So Eagle 1-1 furball bra 12020 Viper 1 merged 1. And then that's all I would need to know. And then I don't shoot because AMRAMs have minds of their own. Sweet. Okay, high and fast and very fast, those are fill-ins that C2 can communicate when pointing out a group or giving a picture. They're really important because they can really assess how a pilot is going to intercept a group. So if I'm targeted on, if I as Eagle 1 am targeted at a lead group and I don't hear anything about high or fast or very fast, the assumption is that he's not high, he's not fast, and he's not very fast, right? So he's therefore going to be below 30,000 feet and below Mach 1. If the bad guy is above 40,000 feet, you throw in the fill-in high. If he's above Mach 1 and slower than 1.5, he's fast. If he's faster than 1.5, he's very fast. We see that all the time with those MiG-25s, MiG-31s, SU-30s. They love to just go balls to the wall with a burner, use all their gas in 10 minutes. Okay, maybe 20. And just scream across the map. It's really important because it can really affect how pilots do their intercept. If a contact is fast, or especially very fast, the range between good guys and bad guys is going to decrease quickly. If the contact is high above 40,000 feet, they're most likely fast as well. It's hard to sustain flight above 40,000 feet without being Mach 1 or faster. But these two things also impact missile kinematics. The faster you are, the higher you are, the more energy you give your missile, the farther it's going to go. That's true for any missile that's fired. So if I'm down at 10,000 feet and my bad guy's at 10,000 feet and I'm shooting an AMRAM and he's shooting an R-77, well, we're going to be like 10 miles or 15 miles before either of us can really shoot because there's such dense air. If I'm 10 miles or 15 miles away from a flanker at 40,000 feet, I'm already dead. So hopefully C2 is noticing these things, but if not, fighters can also call it out because that's SA enhancing for everybody else as well. So if I get targeted at the lead group and C2 doesn't say that he's high and fast, but I notice he's at 41,000 feet and he's greater than 600 knots ground speed, because in the F-15 it's ground speed that's indicated, and I believe in the Hornet it's Mach speed that is indicated for the bad guy, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Just throw out, thank you, I appreciate that. Then just go ahead and throw out that fill-in. You can just say lead group high fast. That should perk everybody's ears, including the controllers. And then that might just become a little bit more of a high priority. And to that same point, right? Remember, it is 600 to 900 knots giggity and 1.0 to 1.5 Mach. That's fast, and then 900 knots to 1.5 because we need to appease the Navy guys too. All right. Timeout and kill and splash. Kind of going back to the faded and vanished comm. Sorry, that was a little out of order. Timeout is when a fighter assesses on their HUD or wherever their countdown timer is that a missile has impacted the bad guy. Now, DCS, we all know every single weapon countdown timer is frickin' borked, except maybe GBU-12s. But every other missile, every other bomb, their countdown timer is borked. For me, my general rule when I fly and shoot AMRAMs, especially if I'm shooting long range, that missile could impact another 10 to 15 seconds after I see the countdown timer timeout. So you can call timeout right when it gets to 0, or you just maybe wait a few more seconds, then call timeout. But again, that means you shot a missile, BVR, you can't actually see the missile impact, maybe because you turned cold or it's just too far away. You can't visually see the airplane blow up. Then you just call timeout. Kill is kind of a trainingism, but kill and splash are basically synonymous. It means I saw the thing blow up and he's dead. You visually saw it with your 2 eyeballs on your 2-dimensional screen and he's dead. So a little bit of a difference there. With timeout, he might not actually be dead. The missile should have impacted, but maybe he notched my missile at the very last second and survived. Any questions on those distinctions. Very good. So tiger is a word I've never heard on the radio, but that's okay. It's there. It's one that we could use. It's kind of a cool word. If we want to introduce it, we can. We don't have to. What it basically means, I have enough fuel and ordnance to accept a commitment. I'm basically fuel and weapons yellow or better. That's what it means. The opposite of that is unable. I can't do the thing that you want me to do, is really what it is, for whatever reason. Maybe I don't have the right weapon. Maybe I don't have the weapon at all. Maybe I'm out of gas. Cool. So that's a review of the brevity words. Any questions on that before we go into these next couple phases? Okay. Now we're going to cover just generic basic comm between fighters and C2 by phase of the fight. So we're going to start with check-in and go kind of in a chronological order. So in check-in, fighters check in, switch to 254 or whatever the air-to-air common frequency is. Wait a few seconds, make sure the frequency is clear. Don't step on somebody. Check in with the controller, with your airplane or your flights, bullseye location, or maybe location from an airfield, your flight status, and as required, if it wasn't already briefed, tell them what ordnance you have, what playtime you have. If there's any missing flight members, maybe you're supposed to be a 4-ship, but now you're a 3-ship, things like that. If it's something that's pre-briefed and you are exactly how you were briefed or planned, you are ASFRAG'd. And that just means I'm good to go, thumbs up, green, no issues. If you check in maybe ASFRAG'd -1, that means you're missing a player, you're missing an airplane. Maybe you were supposed to be a 4-ship, somebody fell out, had SRS issues, DCS disconnect. ASFRAG'd -1 means I'm now a 3-ship. Maybe you're a mixed Viper flight with multi-role loadouts. So and it wasn't briefed what your ordnance is going to be, but maybe you could just check in with your ordnance. Oh, yep. Viper 1, 4-ship ASFRAG, checking in, bullseye 1, 2, 3, 45. Each plane 5x1. 2 harms, playtime 30 minutes. Right? It's a little bit lengthy, and usually is only given if it's not briefed ahead of time, but those are things that you can say. We're not going to talk about words. That's kind of outside the scope of this. Tactical intercept flow. So after you checked in, you're ready to fight, right? Air to air. Again, this is air to air. So once you checked in, you're assumed like ready to go. You're ready to fight. C2 can task you to go, intercept something or go target something. So that'll start with like a commit or a target, or maybe just C2 gives a picture and then you say, yeah, I'm going to go get the West group. Sweet. We talked about this already, the fill-ins that C2 can give to really help build SA. Type ID, okay, that's like, hey, is this an F5 or is this a MiG-31? If the scenario allows for that, for C2 to know what that contact is, then go ahead and communicate that. Number of contacts, that's huge. Usually in DCS, the fighters know how many contacts are there because our radars are perfect all the time. But it doesn't hurt to say, hey, this is like heavy 3 contacts. That means there's 3 contacts, and that's a lot of contacts for one player to shoot. Sweet. So once a fighter has all that information, maybe an initial picture or point out or commit direction from C2, fighter can acknowledge that commit and say, yeah, Eagle 1, commit 270. And that means the entire Eagle flight's going to go commit to that direction and go kill the group that's over there. C2 will usually just say Eagle 1 commit west. I mean, you could say like commit 270, but like commit west or commit lead group or something with a group label, and then the fighter will say like, yeah, Eagle 1 commit 270. Slight distinction there. We talked about targeted, locked, sorted, all that sort of stuff. That's the next logical phase, right? You say you're going to go get the thing, you're going to go fly towards the thing. Now I'm going to find it on my radar. You don't necessarily need to call locked. You can. But if you call locked and not targeted, it doesn't necessarily mean that you own that group. You may not shoot it. If you call targeted, the assumption is you're going to shoot. So call your targets, call your sorts if required. Then call your shots, right? Fox 1, 2, and 3. We all know what those mean. If you don't, it's listed above. Call your shots, because otherwise C2 doesn't know if it's been shot, and then maybe they're going to give you a threat call, or they're going to start worrying and wonder if there's an issue. So if you just call your shots, really gives everybody the nice warm fuzzy that everything's are good. We're not going to go into intercepts at all, like bonsai, skate, and short skate, but if you're familiar with those terms and you know how to use them, go ahead and call it. If you plan to go to the merge, call bonsai.
A question about shot.
Yes.
If you call a shot, should you give more information, or is there an assumption he knows what target you're shooting?
You should. That's a really good question. So I'm skipping a bit of detail with some of this. When you commit, maybe you commit in a direction, maybe not necessarily to a group, but then you should call your targets with a group. So Eagle 1 targeted West group, Eagle 2 targeted East group, and then your follow on to that is Eagle 1 Fox 3 West group.
Okay.
And then when you communicate that, that's kind of all the information you need to. Now, if there's no group label, you can just say Fox 3 bra, 270 25 30,000 track south or hot, right? It's kind of hard because not every plane has the bullseye information, so that really kind of makes this weird. Normally, this would all be done with bullseye or group labels, bullseye or group labels, because it's global SA for everybody. Bra is only specific to one person, and it gives 0 SA to everybody else. All right, unless you start adding different distinguishing features like altitude, track direction, number of contacts, that can all help. Like Vipers, for example, who have great situation, like link situational awareness, but they don't have target bullseye or even target bra on their radar page. If I know there's some friendlies over to my west looking north and they're targeting that west group over there to my northwest, and then I hear, Eagle 1 Fox 3 to my north at 30,000 feet track south 2 contacts, right? I can look at, as a Viper pilot, I can look at my HSD and be like, oh yeah, Eagle is targeted to those 2 contacts way over there. I don't need to worry about it, kind of a thing. Another thing too, yeah, for sure. Another thing too, there are some airplanes in DCS, like the A-10, that have amazing missile warning systems. And they will pick off that missile from so many miles away at such weird angles, and they'll do it 100% of the time. And they'll get really angry with you if you call any sort of missile launch, or if you don't call any sort of missile launch when you fire it. And please call before you fire. Don't shoot and then call it. Call it and then shoot. You have lots of A-10s angry at the waste of chaff and flare. Otherwise, very good. Call your shots. If you haven't already, call your intercept flow. Call your out. If you're going to turn away and bravely after your missile goes active, if you have such a missile, then call your timeout or splash as appropriate. So again, if you have an active missile, you turn cold, you can't see the guy behind you go boom when your missile countdown gets to 0, you call timeout. Call timeout with a group label, call timeout with a rough geographic location, call it with an altitude, something to give people SA. If you actually see the dude blow up, so you'd be like, yeah, splash, flanker, my nose, 5 miles, 30,000, right? You can be a little trucker com with that, just kind of get the point across. Yeah, I killed this guy over here. Don't actually say those words on the radio, because then I'll thump you, but you get my point. Very good. Okay. I guess I'll go into Vanished real quick. So the way we would use Vanished is if there was a timeout. So again, the fighter can't visually see the guy blow up, and then C2 sees this guy disappear from the radar. This guy being the red contact, the bad guy. So you hear a timeout, and then C2 sees him disappear from radar. That's Vanish, right? So that would be a little bit of amplifying comm. So fighter's like, hey, I might have killed this guy. I called a timeout. I shot a missile. Everything was good. Then C2 comes back and says, yeah, East group vanished. Okay, sweet. That guy's maybe got a 6.9% chance that he's alive, but he's probably dead. After an intercept is complete, this is the time for flight leads to gather weapons and fuel states from within the flight. Do this on intra-flight, please. Otherwise, it clogs up a lot of radio time. But there's two different words. I didn't talk about them earlier. We can talk about this more later. Not really the point of this, but there's ops check and what state. So what state is I want to know your weapons and fuel. Ops check is just fuel. The way that's communicated within a flight is number of active missiles by number of semi-active by number of IR missiles, and then your fuel state. So the example here, so 3 by 2 by 1, 6.9 means that I have 3 AMRAMs, 2 AIM-7s, 1 heater, and I have 6.9 thousand pounds of gas. Now, when you communicate to C2, there's a better way. I'm actually getting a little ahead of myself, but we'll come back to it again. When you talk to C2, you want to talk in playtime. And I'll actually just leave it at that. We'll come back to it because there's another section of this here. And Sheepy, I'm realizing I have 15 minutes, so don't you worry. Contingencies. Okay. Well, don't tell me that because I'll be here forever. Contingencies to this intercept going well, right? So what we talked about in the first part of this was everything goes well, right? We call commit, we call target, we call shots, we call our out, we call our timeout. Things are hunky-dory, but things don't always go as planned. And here's how they can not go as how we can communicate it. So our first contingency is that C2 needs you to target something else, maybe of higher priority. Right? Maybe you were originally targeted to 2 ship of F5s, but now you have a 4 ship of MiG-31s coming in. Right? C2 can direct a skip it. Eagle 1, skip it, west group, target, east group, bra, blah, blah, blah. And fighter would say, yep, dropping west group, Eagle, commit east, target east group, something. I see I'm getting a couple pings in event discussion. I will get that in just a moment. Second contingency. Fighter can't find the bad guy that he's been directed towards. You can say clean. That means, again, you cannot see it on radar. Okay, so Eagle 1 can say, Eagle 1 clean east group. Now that should automatically prompt C2 to come back with some sort of response to point out the east group. Because if the bad guy can't, or if the Eagle can't see the bad guy, well then why is anybody out there? So C2 should come back and help out a bro and give him another point out. Now, fighter, if you don't automatically get that, you just be like, Goliath, Eagle 1, bogey dope east group. There you go. Solves your problem. Fighter loses lock, you can just, so you had the lock, but then you lost it, right? You can just say lost lock. So there's a bit of a distinction there between lost lock and clean. Fairly straightforward, I would say. Yes, very much a call for help. Again, C2 comes back with a point out in bra. If the fighter can't determine ID, not a problem for the Eagle, but in the Viper, I know I've experienced where it's just, it doesn't show up green, it doesn't show up red, it's just white. It's like, fuck, I don't know what this is. Maybe a bogey. And it can just be like, imposter, declare bra, declare bullseye, declare my nose 20 miles, 30,000 hot. The controller should come back with location information, whether in bra or bullseye, or group label, if it's already labeled. And then give the ID. So hostile, bogey, friendly, right? That's what a declare is asking that question. Really do emphasize the ID. That helps the fighter go pew pew faster. Okay, strobes, jamming. There's some pretty neat pictures here. Thanks WAGS for putting out a video displaying radar jamming on the F-18. That's where this comes from. The F-18 shows that it's being jammed by having a little J in the dugout up here at the top of the radar screen. You have a max range of 99.9 because the system is basically telling you, I don't know the range. I know there's jamming along this bearing, but I don't know the range. That's the whole point of jamming, is to deceive you, right? And then also in the on your instrument panel here, you'll also see that J on your
SA page.
SA. Yes, thank you. I don't fly the Hornet. I'm sorry. I don't know the names of all these things. So the Hornet will see it have 3 indications minimum of radar jamming. On the Eagle, this is what it looks like. It's these hollow bricks in a straight line. It means you're being jammed. Sometimes you can see through it a little bit. A lot of times you can't. So the way a fighter communicates that is you say strobe. Rage 5-1, strobe 260. That means, hey, I as Rage 5-1 am being jammed along the bearing 260 from me. This prompts a response from C2 with an emphasis on the range. The big item here is the range, because that's, among other things, but it's the biggest piece that the fighter doesn't have. Rage 5-1, strobe range 25, or whatever the range is, 30,000 hot hostile, 2 contacts, flanker, elite group. Very good. Any questions about strobe? This is something I think a lot of us experience in DCS, and especially as more and more modules can display radar jamming, this is going to become more and more common because there are a lot of aircraft that can jam out there, including now the F-18 can, it has a self-protection jammer. The F-15 can jam. The A-10 can jam. The flanker can jam. The F-4 can jam. And I'm missing a few others, but you get my point. So this, I feel, could be much more useful. I don't know about the Hornet's home-on jamming capability, but in the Eagle, you can lock a strobe, just like you would lock a radar contact, and you can shoot a radar home-on jamming shot. I haven't done too much of it. I don't know how effective, I mean, it's not very effective, but I don't know what's the optimal range to fire a radar home-on jamming shot, but you're not going to do it at like max range, right? Because the missile is just homing in on the jamming source. It's like firing a harm in harm as sensor mode in the Viper, if you fly the Viper. It's not going to a waypoint, or it's not going to a known range, so it's not going to loft. It's just going to fly straight at the thing and try to lock onto it.
Yeah, so the
Coolio.
kinematics get shit when you do that, basically.
Yeah, when you do radar home on jamming, it's not shooting with optimal kinematics. Okay, last subsection here, and I'll get to the questions that I think people are posting, so just bear with me. Okay, enemy turns on their radar, because they don't want to get shot either. They want to know where you are. This is where we get back to that nail spiked and naked conversation, right? So per the book, nails does not require a C2 response. Nails is like you'd almost never hear people call nails, but it can actually be really informative if it's something that's discussed ahead of time in a brief. For example, in some of the liberation missions we've run in the last few weeks, we've had threats of MiG-31s. We all know MiG-31s will kill us all very quickly, easily, and at range. So just knowing that there's MiG-31s out there can be helpful. So if somebody calls nails 31, it's just a kind of the way we used it was an informative call to everybody else. Like, hey, there's 31s out there. And then we had a contract to have like F-14s go kill them with Phoenixes as much as possible. However, normally nails does not require a C2 response. Spike does. So if a fighter gets locked in STT, you're going to get that spike. And you have the option, you don't have to, but if you want to know the range of that bad guy, you can say Jedi 3-1 spiked 030. And then C2 comes back and says Jedi 3-1 spike range 42, 12,000 hot hostile Foxbat, or whatever it is, if that's known. The fighter could even say, oh, spiked flanker east, right? You can throw in the type if you want. And you can say a cardinal direction. You don't have to be very specific with saying, oh, 035 or 069. You can just say whatever you want in cardinal direction or bearing. The big thing there is the range too, but the full response is how I have this enumerated here. That spike response, strobe response was covered more in detail if you are a controller, you have access to the AWACS Club, and that video was posted in the AWACS Club about responding to these calls. So something the controller would do. Sweet. Okay, and then the last contingency, if you do go to the merge, right, tally versus no joy, and also blind visual. So blind is I can't see my friendly, I can't see my wingman. Visual means I see my wingman, my friendly. Tally means I see the bad guy. And no joy means I don't see the bad guy. So you can be blind and tally. or visual no joy, or if things are really bad, blind no joy, which just means you're basically tumbleweed. Okay, there are a few things in chat, and I'm going to read this real quick. Reject missile, return to gun. Oh, 50%. What was Mungo saying about 50%? Oh yeah, yeah. PK for M120s. Yeah, I would say it's about 50% right now. If it takes 2 missiles, is it really better PK? Lols, I like that. 240 countermeasures. Yeah, the A10 is a lot, but we like to keep them. For airground weapons, is there a similar way to relaying states like there is for air-to-air, or just say the weapon is and how many there are? To answer your question, Butterfly, it's the latter. So 2 Mavericks, 2 GBU-12s, and guns, right? Because there's so many different types of air-to-ground weapons. And really, when I was talking about the air-to-air stuff, the first number is your active missiles. So if you're flying a flanker and you're carrying 3 R-77s and 4 27ERs and 2 AA-11s, or the R-73s, sorry, you'd be 3 by 4 by 2, right?
Yep.
It's the same. It's the same. It's a broad category of missiles, is really what it is. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's got me thought.
For sure. Okay, we're going to talk about fuel states and playtime, unless there are any questions about the previous section we just covered. Excellent. So fuel states and playtime. Like we mentioned before, when you're talking within a flight, you want to communicate fuel in thousands of pounds of gas. So if you have 10,000 pounds of gas, it's 10.0. If you have 5,500 pounds of gas, you are fuel state 5.5. When you communicate to C2 or somebody outside of your flight, really, you don't want to talk about number of thousands of pounds of gas because that doesn't mean anything to them. The fuel currency of the entire war is playtime. It's how long in minutes or hours you can stay on station and do your job. So that's playtime. Mind you, now this is the amount of time you have on station, not till you reach 0 on your fuel gauge, right? You still have to, fly home and land. So it's basically your time till bingo. So if your bingo is 3,000 pounds and you have 9,000 pounds right now, and you burn 6,000 pounds an hour, your playtime is 1 hour. If you have a bingo of 3,000 pounds and you have 8,000 pounds right now, and you're flying an Eagle and you burn 10,000 pounds an hour, you have 30 minutes, because 8 minus 3 is 5. 5 divided by 10 is a half, so a half hour. Make it a sense? If you have more than 1 hour playtime, you can just say 1 plus 15 for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Or if you just say playtime 45, that means you have 45 minutes of playtime. That's what C2 wants. C2 doesn't care that you have 15,000 pounds of gas left because you're a double-bagged Eagle. Woohoo! They just care that that 15,000 pounds of gas is going to last you another hour to hour and a half. The other way that's a little bit more generic that you can communicate fuel states and weapon states. We'll start with fuel states, using the color system. So per the book, this is a very generic definition, but per the book, the green means more than 1 engagement remaining. Yellow means I have 1 engagement remaining, and red means nope, can't do it. Stop. Got to go do something else. This is where we could use the word unable. So C2 says Talon 75 commit 090. Talon 75 unable, weapons red. Like, no, bro, I don't have any missiles. I can't do it. I might have gas for days, but I can't do it. Weapons works the same way. The definition for green, yellow, red is the same. Like, do I have enough missiles to do more than 1 engagement? Okay, I mean, that's a little bit arbitrary, like how many missiles I'm going to use in engagement. Well, you can maybe assume like 2 per engagement. Also depends how many contacts. I mean, if there's 5 contacts, well, then you can do 1 engagement and then you're done and then you go home. But use your common sense. This can also be pre-briefed. So it's ever briefed trumps this standard definition. So if weapons green is maybe more than 6 AMRAMs for the whole flight, each individual flight, but the whole flight. So maybe Eagle flight is weapons green because that whole flight has 8 AMRAMs, but maybe the Viper flight is not weapons green. There's something less because they only have 3 AMRAMs in the whole flight remaining because they fired them all, right? That's how that would be specific to each flight. Or if you want to break it down even further to elements. So Viper 1 and 2 are green, Viper 3 and 4 are red. That's also possible. It just has to be discussed in the brief. So then in this specific example, maybe weapons green is more than 6 AMRAMs for the flight. Weapons yellow would be 2 to 5. And then weapons red would be 0 or 1 AMRAM remaining. You can just make it up, right? But it would roughly correlate to I have more than 1 engagement remaining, 1 engagement remaining, or cannot engage. Okay. One thing too, it is possible. So let's say Viper 1 and 2 are out there together. Maybe Viper 1 has no AMRAMs left, but Viper 2 has 2 AMRAMs left. So the whole flight has 2. Maybe in this particular mission that actually is weapons yellow, and they can go do that 1 more engagement. Viper 1 is just kind of along for the ride. He's an extra radar. He's an extra set of eyes to look for bad guys. So it is recommended, like, if you have kind of that missile imbalance, maybe still fly together as a 2-ship for mutual support. Obviously, fuel, I mean, if one guy has to go home, then you go home, right? But you can still fly around and be somewhat effective with 0 AMRAMs and 2 heaters. Because maybe if you go to the merge, you can use those heaters. Not ideal, but you could. We've talked about the air-to-air missile count terms. It's number of active by number of semi-active and number of IR. Now, if you're flying in a super modern jet like the Viper that doesn't even carry AIM-7s, you can just say, I'm 5 by 1. The semi-active middle number is just dropped. It's assumed dropped. Or if you're just not carrying any that day and you're still flying on a Eagle or a Hornet that can carry AIM-7s, but maybe you're not that day, you can say, hey, I'm 7 by 1 in my Eagle. You don't have to say I'm 7 by 0 by 1. Just say 7 by 1. Or if you beard comb your Hornet, you're 10 by 2. Very good. Oh, and then this is where that paragraph went. Okay, yeah, sorry. This one's a little out of order. The checkout, the checkout phase, that should have been a little earlier when we were talking about the chronological flow of fights. Checkout, when you're done, when you go home, tell C2, tell them what you want to do, tell them what your intentions are, and maybe they can help you out. Maybe you're RTB, maybe you're AR, you want to go to AR, maybe you want vectors to the tanker. And then you watch your merry way. Okay, final topic. Sorry, Sheepy, I'm a couple minutes over. This will be brief. Winning and losing comm. Winning and losing comm is a concept that I kind of introduced to the controllers a few weeks ago, and I want to introduce it to fighters too. I think it's a pretty intuitive concept, but once it's kind of explained, it's fairly straightforward. Of the words that we talked about, some of them communicate that thing that we're winning the fight, and some communicate that we're maybe not winning the fight or even losing the fight. At the surface level, that's what winning and losing comm really means. When we go through our intercept in the ideal fashion, that is winning comm. Right? Things are going the way they should. Once we start getting into these contingencies, that's losing comm. If I can't find the bad guy, if he's jamming me, that's losing comm. That means, the balance isn't always in my favor, right? So that's why it's really important to communicate things like targeted, sorted, your shots, because that's winning comm. That tells the other players, that tells the controller that things are going well, and you want to say that. But you also want to communicate when things aren't going well. If you can't find the bad guy, your radar's clean, or you lost locked, or you're being spiked, or being engaged. Also, if you can't find the guy, you need a bogey dope, right? Or you're in a merge and you say no joy. You can't visually see the bad guy. That's all losing comm. You're on the back foot. So really, the kind of the winning in comm versus losing comm is really the why to this whole thing. Why it's important to communicate the proper word at the proper time, and then knowing the distinctions between things like clean and naked, or blind or no joy, right? Because they communicate different things. Sometimes it's a subtle difference, but if you communicate it properly, it really enhances other people's essay. Guys, that concludes my briefing on fighter basics. I know we spent a lot of time on some of the definitions, but hopefully that really informed the rest of that brief there. Are there any questions about what we covered? Or maybe there's something else that's on your mind that you want to discuss real quick? Awesome, I taught you all perfectly, love it. So I am going to be handing this over to Sheepy for Liberation. I will be participating in Liberation myself, but I'm going to be controlling, so I'll have a few minutes of downtime for anybody who wants to discuss. Or we can discuss later, or tomorrow, or send me a DM with your question, and we can hash it out. Awesome. Again, references are at the top of the page, and the disclaimer stands. This is for DCS, and really the whole presentation came from brevity definitions also. So that's a great resource. Check it out if you have kind of questions, especially about definitions. Great resource. All right, without further ado, we can hit stop tape, and Sheepy, the floor is yours.